Welcome, everybody, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by a very special guest, friend of Spot On Solutions, and we're excited what the future holds for our partnership with him. Peter Lyons, entrepreneur and co-founder of the Restoration Golf League. Peter, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me on today.
Super excited to have you. If for nothing else, Peter, to selfishly talk about golf just because I love golf and I love playing golf with my friends and family. But obviously we've got a whole bunch of stuff we want to talk about today with regards to what is the RGL and what you've done there. But I think first and foremost, just to kind of get to know you better and introduce you to our audience, if you wouldn't mind, maybe talk a little bit about your background, your career, and what led you to the restoration industry.
Perfect. Yeah, it started out in 2005, 2006 in the environmental abatement world, working for a company in Southern California, doing the asbestos-lead mold demo side of things. Worked for that about 8 years, 2 different companies, Southern California, actually throughout California. Jumped into the environmental consulting world about 10 years ago. And from there, started my own business almost 7 years ago. Actually, 7 years ago, as of March 1st, was our breakout year when we started our own business doing the environmental consulting, asbestos-lead mold, indoor air quality, anything that's associated with we say if you can test it and there's someone that will read a sample, we do that type of work. So that's what ties me into the insurance restoration world, because obviously with fires and floods, there's always environmental contaminants or work that needs to be done pre or post restoration work. So now that's the insurance. We obviously do work with other entities other than insurance, but right now I'd say probably 90% of our work is associated with the insurance restoration world.
Love it. Okay, cool. Well, there's so much more I want to get into and talk about with what you're doing with the Restoration Golf League, but I do want to make sure, we spend a little bit of time just getting to know, like what you talked about before we started recording, what pays the bills for you, right?
Right.
And this consulting, agency or world that you live in is really interesting because you get to associate with a lot of like insurance agents, and obviously you work with a lot of adjusters and stuff like that, but also a lot of just restoration companies in general. How has that been, going from like being in the day-to-day like project world into more of a consulting role? Has that been challenging for you to kind of, go like change kind of roles in your career as it's developed? What was that like, I guess, to kind of make that change from, being day to day, maybe out on a truck or working on jobs to now, being more of a consultant? How has that change been hard for you over the years? What has that been like?
It actually hasn't been. I mean, actually, the beauty of it starting the way I started was you worked on the actual project, like doing the removal, the cleanup, the remediation. Right. And so the contracting side of things. So then to go to the consulting side, then you've learned the environmental, the science behind it, and then the legal aspect of the from the environmental consulting aspect of it. So, but I can also put my hat back on and look at a project as, how would we have gotten this project done? Right. It's actual practical application, and now the science, instead of just going from science, to what it should be to what it can be. It's so much easier to work with a contractor and say, look, I've been in your shoes before. This is how I would have attacked this project. I would have done it A, B, C, and D. And they're like, man, I didn't even think about this. Or I just kind of, I know their pains. And so it was actually an easier transition to go from one side to the other. Now, the difficult part is on the consulting aspect, at least in the insurance market, is it's volume based. So instead of having a project that goes a week long on the abatement and remediation side of things, that was one project. Now I have to have 30 of those projects because we're worried about day to day, so I have to keep my
Right.
technicians busy every day of the week because these projects may only be an hour long.
Right.
So that was the more difficult transition of going from, all right, to get to $1 million in sales on the abatement and remediation side of things, your average job might have been $3,000 to $5,000. And then to get the same $1 million in sales on the consulting side, your average job is $750. So now you have to it's a lot more volume coming in the door. So that really was the challenge of how do you get to those numbers. Now you may not need to get to $1 million because of profit margins, but every business
Right.
is different. So
Right.
that was really I said, more of the challenge than anything else. Coming from the contracting side to the consulting side, it was actually a benefit because I could bring that real life experience of doing the work to the consulting side.
I love it. I think that's 100%. There's real value in having a consultant that's got experience with it, right? Like, I think that's one thing that separates us here at Spot On Solutions, sets us apart from other companies, is not only do we, cater specifically as far as digital marketing goes, cater specifically to these types of industries, restoration, cleaning, home service based industries, but we also have experience in it, hands-on experience. Like, one of our founding partners owned a restoration company for 20 years, right? Like, so there's some real value in that, and being like, hey, we know what you're going through because we've done it, right? And I would assume that you get a lot of that, have a lot of those conversations as well as a consultant, where you're like, hey, I know what you're going through. I know this is challenging because I've done this before, right? And so it probably comes from a real, like, legitimate and like real place. Like, you can understand their frustrations or understand the challenges or the triumphs of it, right? Because you've done it before, versus another consultant that maybe there's consultants out there that have experience with dealing with insurance, but they don't necessarily have the experience of dealing with insurance in the exact way that you do, because you used to be that as well.
Right. No, and it's powerful, especially working with those types of contractors,
Yeah.
or understanding it, because I understand, okay, the length of projects, the time, the communication, it's making yourself more well-rounded in that aspect of things. So consulting, you can consult, you can be an expert, but that expert is just in one small field. That how do you relate to all of the parties that are involved? So but yeah, it's definitely helped me, but it's also the project manager estimator world, especially in our industry, or in California. I'm not sure, I can only speak for that, is you did your own sales and marketing, you saw the jobs, you estimated the jobs, you dealt with contracts. I mean, now you didn't project management per se, but it was all, you were always getting those phone calls, scope of work. So it
Right.
was always, every last step of it, all the way through clearance testing, was on your plate. So the very successful people in the abatement world, especially in California, are those guys that can do it all, from sales and marketing, securing the work, to estimate. It was just what created the drive, and the day to day. I was always there was times that my wife would laugh because I would drive into the driveway at 3:30, and then I backed out, and I'm because I got the text message to go look at a job,
Right.
and she would be like, "Was that you?" "No, that wasn't me. Don't they?" Yeah, nothing to see here. And so that's kind of what just drove us, in the drive. And that's why I was able to work, or transition to this. The volume base was a little challenging, but it wasn't something that I wasn't willing to take on.
Love it. Well, I think, I'm gonna make an assumption here. And so you can correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm sure there's a million other pieces that go into this, but um, both when you were, doing more hands-on with projects, as well as now with a lot more of the consulting side of things, I would assume some crucial pieces to that, or a crucial skill to have, rather, is this ability to build relationships, and probably build relationships fairly quickly. I think that also kind of ties into what we're going to talk about here in a minute or so with Restoration Golf League. But would you say that's I would assume that's a crucial skill, building relationships. But from your experience in this consulting world, and being like, you got to talk to insurance agents and different, and and technicians, and there's all sorts of different moving pieces to this. How have you built relationships, or how have you gone about building relationships with different individuals throughout your career?
Yeah, we wouldn't be here today without the relationships. I mean, and
Yeah.
that yeah, I wouldn't have started my own business without the relationships. So, and that's the key to all of this, is that, building strong relationships may benefit you today. It may benefit you, a week from now, a month from now, 6 years from now. You never know when a very good, strong relationships, regardless of what it is going to turn around, and produce tenfold. But it's also, that it may not even produce business.
Right.
It just, you just never know. When I left and started on my own, it was an amazing thing. Because I tell people all the time, I'm not a very good salesperson. And they're like, well, what do you mean by salespeople? You've obviously done very, very well. I'm very technical. So I build my relationships by being the guy that knows things. And if I don't know it, I find it. I go and I research it. So if I'm asked a question once, I'll never have to look up that answer again. I'm going to go find it, and I'm a very technical salesperson in that sense. I'm not the guy that will walk up to the bar and just start shooting with the guy, and rubbing elbows, and if I know him, or that know that person, like, even vaguely, yeah, maybe. But I'll be the guy. At the end of the day, I'll sit at the bar by myself, just kind of decompressing, and not kick. Where a salesperson would be like, "Hey, come over, I'll buy you a beer." I'm like, "No, that's not. It's not. It's just never who I've been." But I've always been, the guy that likes to know things. So as a teammate on sales teams, I was always the guy that, the owner or the manager would go ask Pete. Pete will know the answer. Go, and that was what I prided, and that's what I prided myself on. And that's how I've built very strong relationships with my clientele. Eric is a prime example. Larry is a prime example from, Super Tech. I used to do both their environmental abatement and testing when they owned Shamrock. And they would be the first ones to tell you, like, this is, how Pete is explaining himself is, exactly the way we would see him as a partner. And that's what I want people, I don't sell things. I build partnerships. I build relationships.
I love it.
And that kind of, tails into all of what we do. But when I left my first company to start my own, it was, nobody knew I was leaving. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it the right way. I have an obligation to the company I'm currently working for. I'm going to put my note, obviously my family knew what was going on, but very few people knew that I was moving on and starting my own business. So I gave myself about 6 weeks to open up the doors. Well, I had people tracking me down, like, hey, I want to be your first job. I want to get, when are you ready to go? When's this? And so it was a breath of fresh air when I knew that I was going to open my doors with relationships that I had built over the past 12 years.
Yeah.
And, and they wanted to give me work before I even could accept the work. And I'm like, this is a great feeling to have, that I built strong enough relationships where you hear the scent. It doesn't matter what name is on the shirt. It's the person. Yeah. And this goes to the, again, that is relationships. If it doesn't matter what's on the logo or on that, you could go on and be Tarico today and then ResCon tomorrow, and it just transitions over. You've done something right.
I love it. Well, and I really I think a piece there that I think really resonated with me is you don't have to be this like salesperson, right? Like you mentioned, like you don't have to be like, oh, let's go grab a beer and build this long relationship and talk about all these things. Like you've built relationships just from being like really technically sound and like being able to answer people's questions, right? And like people know, hey, I can call Pete and he's going to give me the correct answer, or he's going to understand how to technically handle this situation. And that's a way you can build relationships. I think a lot of times um people assume in order to build relationships with people, you have to be this extrovert and outgoing person and be able to like just relate to somebody at the drop of a hat, right? Like I picture, my boss Derek is one of those types of people, right? Like could talk to anybody and can immediately start a conversation with someone and relate to someone. Yeah, I have a friend that does that, or I'm from there, or whatever, right? Like can immediately start talking about those things. And while that's great, that's not necessarily the only way to do it, right? Like you can build a relationship with people, build a partnership like you talked about, just by being technically sound and knowledgeable and know that, hey, if somebody has a question, I'm going to be able to answer that question to the best of my ability, and they're going to appreciate those answers. And I love that
Right.
concept of building a relationship that way.
And the key too is that, or one thing I've found is I build relationships in without um I don't look at a relationship of what I'm going to get out of it from the onset. Okay. And a lot of people go into trying to build relationships with their own in-game insight.
Right.
And people will come to me and, they'll throw an idea out to me that they know I'm an idea guy. So I talk ideas all day long. I'll be like, hey, I was been thinking about this, and this. And the reason I do it is you never know who might want to run with an idea that you're talking about. Okay. You know, in the golf league was a perfect example. The brewery was a good example. Different things. You start talking with people, but I also like to hear I like to be a resource and feed someone else's idea. Like, so if they start talking to me about it, and it's like, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this and this, and
Yeah.
this? And where people are very open, where I'm not getting anything out of it. Well, not I'm getting the joy of being able to help someone possibly realize a dream
Right.
or grow an idea and see them grow in their arena. And I love it because it keeps me fresh. It keeps me thinking of,
Right.
things and just moving forward of how can we get this thing, how can we get you to where you want to be? And it's a good feeling. So that I think that's a key too, is that you go into relationships, you can't go into it with high expectations of a return, because you
Right.
never know. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be the best thing ever in different aspects, but each relationship feeds you in a different way. It feeds you might emotionally, physically, financially, all of these, all it may feed you. And this is kind of where you say when you get older in life about family.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because you're blood doesn't mean you're going to get my time.
Yeah. Totally.
Because if you're an emotional suck or a or financial, you tend to gravitate away from those relationships.
Totally.
Uh,
Well, and we've hit at it multiple times, and so I think this is a good time, as good a time as any, to kind of talk a little bit more about it. But this purpose that you've had, or this desire to build relationships, I think very easily led into the Restoration Golf League. And I think the story of the start of it is so cool because it started during one of the craziest periods in the history of the world, right? Like during this pandemic that we had and during COVID, right? So like talk a little bit about the genesis of this idea, Restoration Golf League, and what made you want to kind of form this league that as a way to help people network. What was kind of the start of this league?
well, obviously you nailed it right there. COVID happened,
Yes.
and not only that, but being based in LA County at the time, we were knocked with or hamstrung with probably the most stringent of all regulations of what we could or could not do
Right.
with seeing people, restaurants, movie theater. I mean, you name it, you couldn't go indoors. There was
Right.
absolutely nothing that was allowed to be indoors. Well, offices, were not, signs up at the door. Well, I have 3 sales reps at the time, and they're like, well, what do we do? I mean, we can't see people. We can't do it. So we basically brought everybody into the office, and people were doing scheduling because we were still doing work because we were considered an essential service. So, but my sales reps were now doing scheduling. They're doing reports. I was just trying to find a way to not let anybody go because we didn't
Right.
know, was it 2 weeks, 4 weeks? Come to find out 2 years later, three
Right.
years later, we're still there's talks of, hey, we're gonna go back to COVID restrictions. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So we were at a crossroads, and basically the idea came forth on a ride home. We drove up to a golf tournament in Placer County, which is north of Sacramento. Much more conservative. They were wide open.
Yeah.
Golf tournament with tee boxes. I mean, it was like, this was probably October of 2020, right around there.
Wow.
We're driving home, so it's an 8-hour drive home to Southern California from Sacramento. The co-founder Jonathan, he's a golfer. He's the avid. I mean, I love to golf, but he was in a men's club, and he's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna start a league or a group of people, and we're gonna golf every couple weeks. And I think that's the only way I'm gonna be able to stay relevant. And so I was like, and the thing, the wheels are turning. They're starting to go. I'm like, all right, well, I have 3 sales reps. Why don't we have 3 of these leagues? Let's, why not you start one, you start one, you start one? And then again, started going, because I was driving between Southern California and Northern California between our 2 offices. So it's I leave my house at 2 a.m., to get up to the office by 8 a.m. And so these ideas are starting to go. And I'm like, let's just make this a whole brand new business. Let's just completely, because I want to invite my competitors. So that's how the Restoration Golf League started, where it wasn't ResCon Environmental. It wasn't my golf league. It
Right.
was the Restoration Industries Golf League. And so that's kind of where it started. So basically it was more of an ultimatum to my sales reps. I'm like, look, either you run one of these leagues or you don't have a job. Because at that point we weren't seeing anybody, and we were
Right.
and they're like, okay, so you're forcing me to golf and I keep my job. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I think I'd be good. I think I'd be fine with that.
I think that could happen. So each one of them started one, or we basically the all became heads of one. So one was LA, one was Rivers or Inland Empire, and one was Orange County. So we set out where you're going to golf on the first Thursday of the month. This one's going to golf on the second Thursday of the month. You're going to golf on the third Thursday of the month. So we did a kickoff tournament, had 144 golfers out there at the kickoff tournament.
Wow.
Then we went to signups. So it was more of a, here's what we're planning on doing. This is what we want to do. And people were like, because there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So the league started that way. Well, what happened was we ended up with people flying in from Northern California to take part in some of them. We had people coming up from San Diego to take part in some of the events. So it being, well, why can't we just start one in this area? We're like, by all means, let's definitely, let's entertain the idea. So then San Diego and our Northern California one launched later that year based on people coming down to the first 3. They were coming in. And then we had then we were posting everything on LinkedIn. People were just kind of seeing what was going on, and like, hey, when are you gonna, when are you looking at expanding this? And we're like, we weren't looking at expanding this. At the time, there was a gentleman in Chicago, Dave Foreman. He was actually our first experiment out of the state. He calls and was like, hey, I already have a group of golfers, but I don't really want to do the admin work. I don't want to do any, I want to golf. He's like, would you mind if I took your guys' brand and branded the Chicago Southern Wisconsin Restoration Golf League? If you want to run it, by all means, let's do this. So that's kind of how it just kind of took off. At least the idea of, okay, this could be an industry-wide opportunity. So after year one, we ended up with Phoenix, we had Chicago, and then we had the 5 in California that were actively running, anywhere between 12 golfers to, like, our Orange County one had 50 members at the time. So it just kind of ranged on that. The beauty of it for us at the time during COVID, didn't have to lay anybody off. We actually hired during COVID, and we grew by 25%. And all that being during the pandemic, and the only thing that we changed in or added to our marketing plan was the golf league. So does it work? It's golf. I mean, it's a you in our pre-talk, you asked, is it more than golf? I mean, yes and no. It revolves first around golf. Golf is obviously, so it's what makes it different is it's not a tournament per se that we're all used to doing. Right. You play your own golf ball, you keep your own score. We give out prizes, typically, sometimes cash, sometimes, actual items at every event. So it grows that way, and it's on the calendar depending on the territory. Every 4 to 6 weeks, we have an event. Depending on the territory, like I said, Chicago, they can golf 6 months a year. New England, they golf 6 months a year. Phoenix, we're actually golfing, which is actually crazy. We golf 12 months. We play during the summer. We play some of the nicer courses for a fraction of the cost. So the easiest way to explain this, and people, is it's a business networking group that meets on the golf course with individuals that are in or associated with the insurance restoration world. Right. Now people go, well, what do you mean associated? That could be anybody. Your payroll service provider, your life insurance guy, your auto mechanic, your tire guy, your insurance brokers, CPA, anybody that wants to do work with anybody that's in our world. What better world to be in? We're a multi-billion-dollar, recession-proof, pandemic-proof industry. Right. So there's a lot of people lining up on the door to want to work with our industry. So, like I said, in a nutshell, that's what it is. Now, the goal, obviously, with golf is we get paired up. You're only worried about yourself. You sign up as your individual membership. You come, you pay your green fees. So you're only responsible for your green fees. Now, the only way this works is if you bring guests, but the bringing of a guest is meant to be that guest is going to sign up for a membership and come on their own till whenever they move out of the area. That's, or just find that there's no value in the golf league. Okay. So then when they sign up for their membership, they get paired up with 3 new golfers next go around. And that's the way this builds. The beauty of golf, and if you golf, you golf, so this, it could be 45 hours is a typical round of golf. It's the best time, because you appreciate the game of golf, you understand the etiquette of golf, you all yada, yada, yada. and you're building relationships for
Right.
4 hours on the golf course.
You're sat down with people that you get to chat with for 4 hours, and yeah,
Right.
you're
And
playing golf, but it's a chance to talk to people that you haven't met before. Yeah.
right. And and that's and it could be a potential client, it could be a client already, it could be your competitor, it could be a vendor, it could be whoever. And the beauty of it, and if you go into this with that expectation of, I'm here to build relationships regardless of where you work or what you do, because again, it's something that might benefit, it could be a beneficial relationship today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months from now. Who knows when that is um uh, going to water your seed to grow in whichever way. um Eric, it's funny, we always go back to, and Eric will always will talk about this, because I promoted it and I pitched it to him, and he's like, Pete, I have a hard time with the golfing with competitors. He's like, it wasn't until I saw it happen and I took part in it. Because if you walk up to an owner and say you're going to golf with another owner that's a direct competitor of yours, you may go, that
I'm good.
I don't, yeah. Why am I going to spend 5 hours? You know how valuable my time is? I'm the owner of a company. I completely understand how valuable. I'm an owner of a company as well. But if you can't spend 4 hours with your direct competitor and glean a piece of information or share some information to make a stronger industry or stronger relationships among competitors, I'll tell you this: the golf league's not for you.
Right.
It's because the ultimate goal is to build a stronger industry, is to build stronger relationships, and it doesn't matter what name is on your shirt, competitor or not. Some people have a hard time with that, and Eric will be the first one to tell you. And if you were to be sitting here, you'd be like, it took him 3 or 4 times to hear it and then to actually see it in action. That you get these guys before the round having a Bloody Mary breakfast burrito, and they're chopping, talking shop, or after the event when they're, again, we're closing out talking about who
Right.
won the event, and there, you have the groups sitting at different tables talking to each other. There's nothing more powerful than that. Especially, I wanted to do this to break down barriers of this dog eat dog world of, I'm gonna beat you at whatever cost. That doesn't get us none of that. That doesn't get any one of us anywhere. And so
Right.
that's kind of was the philosophy behind it, was let's golf more. Who doesn't want to golf more, number one? And who definitely doesn't want to build more relationships in what we do? Because I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to do asbestos and lead testing. I want to remove asbestos and lead. But what keeps me going in what we do is all of the relationships that we have in this industry, and and what we've been able to build. So without those, I wouldn't do what I do. So but yeah, so the golf league kind of just took off from there, and right now we have 12 active leagues across the country, 3 in Florida that are going to be getting started this month, and into May, or into April, and then into May. We have New England, which I'm actually getting on a plane after I get off with you to fly from Sacramento out to Boston to do their kickoff event
Oh, that's
tomorrow.
awesome.
Chicago will start first week of May, Vegas, Phoenix, and then we have 5 in California. So San Diego, Southern California, Northern LA, Ventura, Sacramento, and the Bay Area.
That's
But
so cool.
yeah, and it's just it's all built around golf and building relationships. My wife, because she spends so much, like during COVID, before COVID, she was a middle school guidance counselor. COVID happened, school shut down. You try to counsel kids in middle school via Zoom, it's an impossible thing.
Yeah, that's tough.
And then the outlook of what it was going to look like going back didn't really entice a lot of teachers or counselors to go back. So it happened to be at the time where all of this, I was buying a company in Northern California. Yeah. So even crazier than starting, something in COVID, I decided to buy a company in October of 2020.
You just wanted to give
So
yourself more work, Peter.
some more stress in the life. And so she retired, and now because school counseling to business, she handles all of our counseling of adults now in our business. So she's she didn't go far, but she handles all the golf league stuff. So she travels with me typically everywhere to help run the events. If I go to an event, she's her and I, we're shoulder to shoulder going to these events. But I love how she explains it to people, because she's not a business person. She always says, there's no there's no Amway speech. There's no, we're not selling you anything.
Right.
There's no timeshare presentation. There's no catch. It literally is, you sign up. We have a calendar of golf events per area, typically every 4 to 6 weeks. You pay for the events that you can come to. You come and you engage with people in an industry.
Love
That's it. It's it's a very simple concept.
Oh, it's so cool. Well, and it like you've mentioned multiple times, it's not just golf. Like it's an opportunity to network with people in your area. And yeah, it might be a competitor, but I think there's this disconnect in the world that like you have to like viciously compete with those around you, right? Whereas there's an opportunity to learn from people around you, and there's an opportunity to learn how their business operates and how you can be doing, operating your business better. And I think there's so much to it with regards to like, working with competitors, working with people that are, maybe on the fringe of the industry, insurance agents, whatever it might be, right? Like there's a huge opportunity that I think and that's why it's blown up to the point, right? Like you started in 2021 and now, 2 years later, you've got 12 leagues all over the country. Like the reason that it's exploded is because there's a need for it. There's a need to network in these a little bit more casual settings where they don't have to pay thousands of dollars to go fly to some huge convention. They can play in a league that's in their hometown or near their hometown at least. Right. And that's why there's this huge need for it. And it's really, really cool. I guess Peter,
and that's what
go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's what the beauty of it too is. Since it's every 6 weeks, for me as a business owner in my local market, I put it on my calendar and I don't miss it, because I know I'm gonna be somewhere where maybe there's 24 golfers, maybe there's 36 golfers, maybe there's even only 12 golfers, but we all have the same goal. So what we're finding we do have a good mix of owners, because we can't commit too much time, but we do have to commit enough time to stay relevant in our own community and in the industry. So that's the important part, is against the staying connected aspect of it. We all are busy. We all have a lot of things going on, but we have to stay connected with the environment that we are in. And this is an easy way to, I don't want to say easy, it's a great way to do it.
What's Peter, without, there's so much here we could really take more time to talk about. And I want to have you back on again to go into just kind of the details of it, because I love just talking golf and I, a good portion of my free time in the summers where I live is spent playing golf. But I want to talk a little bit, what's the future look like? What are you hoping? What are your goals for, maybe I don't know if you have specific goals for 2023, but what's the future hold for the Restoration Golf League?
Well, the future obviously is bright, I say,
Yeah.
because there's golf around the world, there's
Yeah.
insurance around the world, there's floods and fires. I mean, you start talking about, where it could technically go. What we've kind of figured out is we'll probably do anywhere between 3 and 5 new leagues a year, if possible.
That's
Until,
awesome.
and it's not, and the reason being is in it's kind of like, Howard's a perfect example, okay, of what he does. He started out like, and now he has a team of the, coaches that he's brought up, and they speak the same message. Okay. Right now, the message is coming from me. The message comes from my wife. The members, I think, understand it. It just doesn't, it's not the same push. And so what
Right.
we're finding is the involvement that we have to have in each one of these things launching is more than I thought because there's a lot of administrative stuff that goes on. Everybody else has a day job. They're just, they're out there
Yeah.
grinding there on their. We're trying to get everybody to understand that this is just a piece of your marketing strategy, and it can be a very strong piece of that. And once you buy into that, then the message is preached the same way that my wife and I preach the message. So that's the difficult part of, we have to find a way to scale this, but we have to find a way to get those that are involved understand, how do we push this? What does this look like? What is the commitment? Because it just doesn't happen.
Right.
So what we're looking at is, like I said, 3 to 5 probably is doable until and then what is going to most likely happen is they'll end up having full-time positions at corporate Restoration Golf League, where we'll have an ambassador, or whoever, whatever you want to call that person. You're the Western United States and you're the Eastern United States. And all you do is go to events and you talk, and you go to these local areas and talk golf, and you
Yeah.
golf. And it's like, it's not a bad gig. It just, the reason that is not reality right now is, how do you pay that person?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
there has to be money associated with it. And as we're going, we're still everything that's written about Restoration Golf League is written in pencil with a big eraser, because it does not
It's very fluid
nothing
right
is
now.
set in
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing is set in stone, other than finding people that like to golf.
I love it.
That's it. So where do I see this? I see this, obviously being a great networking piece for the insurance restoration world across the country, at least at a start. That's where, I've built relationships in Florida already. I've built relationships in the New England market. I've built relationships in Chicago and Southern Wisconsin. Now, does that benefit me from a business standpoint? Possibly, but I'm building a national network of restorers and agents and adjusters and contractors. And when people come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Florida. Do you know anybody?" There was a gentleman that's going to be playing in our Tampa league that was from Southern California. I gave him 5 or 6 names of people in the Florida market to go hit up about a job.
Yeah. I love
Like,
it.
that's kind of how, if people use this as a national networking tool, people will, hey, can I play in Tampa if I'm in Tampa? But I'm a member of Orange County. Absolutely. You can go play. The calendars are posted for that reason, for you to be able to take the bull by the horns and become national if you want to be national. So that's what I see. What the craziest part is, like being asked to do interviews like this. Michelle Blevins with CNR magazine, asking me to
Yeah.
talk about golf, and then there. We're gonna be doing a T-box sponsor at the Restoration Industry Association golf tournament in Orlando in April. They asked me that your market, or who you're who your members are, who we want at our golf tournament and at our conference. Would you be interested in partnering up? Absolutely, and obviously that's a national organization. So we're getting tied into a lot of those, or the doors are opening for stuff like that, which again, if I were to have said this, when we first were throwing around the idea, it wouldn't happen. Again, working with guys, our coaches and big names that have written hundreds of books. Howard Partridge, sitting at the table with him, and he's talking about, okay, what's this Restoration Golf League? This is what it is, and how does that tie in? So what my bigger picture, my vision for this is also being a resource for all of our members. What does the golf league, give back or provide to those members? Not only, golf and, an avenue to build relationships, but working with, this is kind of where Restoration Freedom comes in, working with, different IRCRC courses or classes where, again, I have, on LinkedIn right now, our Restoration Golf League page has 2,000, connections. That's a lot of connections that are interested in hearing about what the golf league has. So, where people want to tap into that, but I also want to be able to give back to those. So when I have free time, this is what's free time, I'm trying to, hit up and build, like, if I were a member of this, what would I like? Okay. Discounted IRCRC courses because, we cater to serve pros, we cater to Restoration One, we cater to, all of those franchise systems because they're all members. What does 25% off look like to you to get a WRT class? Well, that one class is probably what your membership cost you for the year. So working on things like that is what I'm trying to do. But I'm here to build a long-term, it's like the long game. It may pay off. Do I want to do work in those other areas and those territories from the environmental consulting world? Possibly. Great way to find out is to network around the country and
100%.
say, is there a market for what I do? Maybe, maybe not. But you figure all these catastrophes happen, freezes in Texas.
Right.
I could go do work in Texas if I wanted to. If I wanted to go to Florida, there's those connections. It's opening up potential opportunities. And again, it's not just for my company. If everybody took it for what it's worth, this is for everybody. That's why we started it. We called it the Restoration Golf League, not the RestCon Environmental or Peter Lyons Golf League. It wasn't meant for just me to benefit from. If it's for the greater, say the greater good.
Yeah, of course.
Really, if you want to take it for what it's worth, you can make it a good part of your marketing strategy.
I love it.
But at the end, my youngest, he's 21. He could recite this, what I'm about to say verbatim. I'm like, guys, how great would it be if we had 50 of these leagues across the country, and once a year, each one of those leagues did a charity tournament that promoted a local charity? Wouldn't that be a great thing?
Yeah,
and
be amazing.
Forget about anything else we do, relationships, all of that. If we set out with that goal in mind, that we're going to do this, we're going to build relationships, we get a golf more, and then once a year, this group that we've built is going to put together a charity golf tournament, and we're going to support a local charity of choosing amongst them what they want to. I would say that's a win. And so that is kind of also what kind of why I say it's a passion project is what keeps us going on some of this, because it by no means pays the bills. It actually, like any other business starting up, it pays my bill. It has increased my day job company's business. So I know it works from that standpoint.
Right.
But it's an amazing thing. And, I just got we got a message from a company in Phoenix, said so and so no longer works at this company. Can you please stop the charge? Okay. Because it was a recurring $25 a month membership charge. And that covers all of the, really not all, it covers a portion of the back end office work,
Yeah.
all the websites, all of the time that's, put into it, some of the prizes. So they cover some of the basic costs. But about 30 minutes later, I was going to message the gentleman via LinkedIn, and I get a message from him and says, "Hey, I left the company in Phoenix and now I moved back home to Idaho Falls. Our golf season will be a modified season, but would you be interested in possibly launching one here?"
Oh, I
So,
love it. I love it.
so that's kind of how it's,
That's how it's growing. Yeah.
you get these guys that have tasted it, they see it, they like it. Would I have ever imagined that I'm going to go try to start a league in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and say, no, never.
Yeah.
But our ex-member, or I wouldn't even call him an ex-member, he's a member of the league and wants to continue the party somewhere else.
I love it. Oh, it's so cool, Peter. There's so many cool things about it. And yeah, if nothing else, it's just been an opportunity to network and meet cool people. But like you said, if at the end of the day, if it gets to a point where you've got 50 leagues all over the country and each one of them does some kind of charity event, like that would be a huge win.
Right.
And I'm excited to be a fly on the wall and get to watch this happen. And hopefully I'm hoping, fingers crossed that all things work out, that Spot On Solutions can be an even bigger part of it, because, selfishly, again, I love the opportunity to golf and meet new people. So it's kind of a win-win for me. So that's the hope.
That's kind of, right. And that's kind of what, obviously Spot On Solutions plays a role in certain, because how I'm getting tied into or being brought into that relationship with the Restoration Freedom, the webinar and the boot camp. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing with the golf league if I did not have that freedom in my, what I call, quote unquote, day job.
Right.
And there's tools that are learned, the digital marketing, owners can do that on their own all they want and try to do it all they want. But again, are you now, how tight are you to your, how much more work are you putting on your plate? Is there freedom there? No.
Right.
Is there freedom in, I'm the bookkeeper, I'm the sales and marketing manager, I'm the operations manager, I'm all of this? No. Okay. What's your org chart look like? What is giving, what tools do you need to create that freedom? And, Eric has been one of my, we're friends. We have a great partnership in what we do. But he's been my business coach for the longest time. And he's instilled in me on a lot of things, where this last year we've put people in place in our day job to give me the time to do what we're doing here. And that's all what the boot camp is, or not only, is to, what are the tools I need as a business owner to have more freedom to do whatever that is. In my world, I want restoration owners and business owners to be able to golf more. Well, how do we, give me the freedom to golf more. And that's the key. So it's kind of funny, like, I'm too big. Well, go to the boot camp and go on the webinar, listen to them and figure out what are the tools I need in my business to not have to worry about spending 4 hours on the golf course.
I love
it. It's funny because I wouldn't be doing this, would never have happened if I was still tied to all of the day-to-day operations.
Yeah. You got to have the freedom. You've got to have the freedom. Right. Yeah.
And it was the beauty when they came up with that, with I was in the room when they were like, they were brainstorming the whole freedom, what's my restoration freedom. And it just resonated with me because it's just like, oh my gosh, the idea behind all of that, it's like take the weight off the shoulders and the back. Like it's not all reliant on me, and it gives me time to work on the business and not for the business.
I love it. Peter, thank you so much. We've talked about so many cool things, especially with the RGL and what you're doing there. And I'm excited to hopefully be a part of it in the future. I don't want to keep you too much longer. And so I want to finish with kind of our 3 rapid fire, if you will, questions here at the end. First question, favorite book or podcast that you're, reading or listening to right now, or maybe that you've read or listened to recently?
It's funny. My attention span, ADHD, I don't read much.
Okay.
And it's not, no. And it's not that I don't read. I have books that if you take a look at all of the books on my bookshelf, they have pretty much usually have an airline ticket, a sports ticket, or something in the book, usually about 3 chapters in the book, because that's about as much as I get to. But I picked up a book, Extreme Ownership, and it's written by the Navy SEALs. And I told Eric, it made me mad reading it. And it's not because you read books and you read things. And there was a couple of things that I read it out loud to my wife, and she said, well, why are you reading this out loud? I said, because now I need to be accountable to what I'm reading to you. So it forced, there was a lot of things about the accountability and culture is, if you let things, you let the bad apple sit in the bunch, it's going to rot out the rest of the apple. So just different things. So I got through a couple of, probably 4 or 5 chapters of that book. It's actually in my backpack. I'm, probably hopefully, find some time on the plane ride to Boston to crack it back open. But one of my favorites right now.
Love it. Second question. You wear a lot of hats, Peter. But between the Restoration Golf League and your business that pays the bills, like you say, how do you recharge at the end of a long day? How do you relax and take some time to shut your brain off?
It's not really, it's a funny
Golf,
thing.
Maybe.
Well, what's funny about that is people think, I'm an average golfer. I have a 19.2 handicap.
Yeah.
Because typically if I'm golfing during the week, I haven't found a way to say freedom from my phone. When we can figure out that part of it, in my golf game may be a lot better than that is. But I also like the social aspect of golf better. What I would say when I go home, what kind of gets me is I go outside. I have an English Mastiff, 200-pound dog.
Love it.
And he's the guy, so I'll sit out there. He always wants to play with his ball, and when I get home, and so I sit there, recharge there. The problem in the entrepreneurial world, and this is where I do still need to figure out the freedom aspect of it, is how do you turn off this? And how do you turn it off? Because I still have not found the way to recharge. Like it's like I'll be in Fiji, and it'll be okay, wake up, and it's work, or depending on I was we had our family vacation in Hawaii a couple weeks ago. It was 7 days. As much as it was recharged or recharging, I'm still like trying to figure out how to. But weekends, we spend time with my wife. But now with the wife working in the business, it's we see a lot of each other. We all we do is talk business and where we're going. We talk golf. It's still trying to figure out how to recharge completely. But we'll get there.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, listen, it's a work in progress, right? And you're still, building something really cool with Restoration Golf League. And so, yeah, I know we've gotten some good suggestions on the podcast, but I appreciate that. That's a really honest thought that, like, you're working on it, and it's not always it's not always perfect, right? You've got some things that you try to do, but it's not always going to be perfect. And I think that's a real honest take from an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs deal with that as well. So, last question, Peter, before I let you go, if you could rewind to the beginning of it all, right? Like either rewind to the beginning of your career, or maybe rewind to the beginning of the Restoration Golf League, whatever piece you want to take here. But if you could rewind to the beginning and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
It doesn't have to be perfect. No, I mean, again, I'm somewhat a perfectionist. And actually, you know what? This would be probably the best. Not everybody is going to work as hard as you and have as much passion about what you're doing than you. And is setting the expectations, not based on what your expectations are, but because people will walk around as like, Pete, you're here on expectations, like you run life here, but this is more reality. And that difference is where a lot of that stress comes in life, because I want to be here all the time. And I think I put a lot of undue stress on myself setting it that high. And again, it's hard to say because it's like, we're here because of that. But, is it the best thing health wise? And that'd probably be the other thing I tell myself: take care of yourself. You're no good to nobody else if you're not good to yourself. If you're not eating right, you're not exercising, you're not doing yourself, you're not going to be good for anybody else.
Oh, I love that. That's some great advice, Peter. Again, just thank you for coming on the podcast. This has been really fun for me to just get to know you better and learn about the Restoration Golf League and all the cool stuff that you're doing there. And again, just thanks for coming on, and we hope to have you on again in the future.
Always willing to jump on and talk golf.
Love it.
And life, and whatever else we want to talk about.
In business and all of the above, right? Thanks again, Peter.
Right.
Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.